Welcome to Camp Constitution Radio with your host, Hal Shurtleff. This show is heard on WBCQ The Planet every Monday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is a broadcast out of Monticello, Maine, in a beautiful Aroostook County, and I'll be heading up there in a few weeks. Looking forward to it. I'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. The show also is rebroadcast on IPMNation.org every Saturday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can also go to tuneinradio.com and put in WBCQ, and you can listen to the show online. Not that just show, but other shows are on WBCQ as well. And we do upload these shows on our YouTube channel, Camp Constitution. And you know what's interesting about YouTube? Now, we had almost 2,000 subscribers. Now, that's a drop in the bucket. I get that. Some of these people with 1 million subscribers, but 2,000 for our little entity is not bad. And we were gaining about maybe, 30 or so a week. And things snowball from 2,000 to 20,000 to 100,000 and more. And I was all set to announce that we had over 2,000. I went to bed one night with, I think, 1,999, and I woke up and we're down to 500 subscribers. I said, how do we lose that? And I went to the various diagnostics or the the various statistics that YouTube does. They do a pretty good job of that, and there was no record of me losing or us losing 500 subscribers. So I don't understand how that happened. But anyway, I think our goal is just to get the truth out there as much as we can and promote it and encourage people to share the videos and share the information and let the chips fall where they may. You think of 200, we have up to, I think we just reached the 300,000 mark on our YouTube channel. And that's not a whole lot when it comes to the bigger picture, but that's a lot of people listening to some information that we put out in our little camp program and some of the things we do around the region. And it's growing all the time. Professor Willie Soon conducted 2 classes at our camp just early last month, and one of them has almost 5,000 views. So I think that's very respectable. I wish some of the others would get more views other than the 20 or 30 or 40 or so. I think there's some phenomenal stuff out there. But I know as we keep on doing our thing, getting out there in front of the public with our information tables and our camp program and getting on other radio shows, I definitely think those numbers will increase. One of the things I can say with a lot of pride is the Sam Blumenfeld Archives, or just known as the Blumenfeld Archives. We are averaging about 200,000 views a month, and I think from January until June, something like 40,000 downloads of the books and some of the articles and the videos, mainly about 4 or 5 books, the NEA, Trojan Horse in American Education, and the Alpha Phonics and the Alpha Phonics Workbook and things like that. I'm very happy to see that. That's really exciting. I mean, people all over the United States and even other parts of the world are able to get this important information and learn how to teach people how to read properly. And you don't have to be a PhD in English to do it. The Alpha Phonics, this is an incredible, relatively easy thing to do. My wife and I used it on all 5 of our children, and they're all very good readers. So please visit that Blumenfeld Archives and share it. Let people know. What I've been doing the last couple of weeks is, in between my other projects, is to just go online and put down homeschoolers in whatever state. I start off with Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, and I'll copy and paste the contact information and then send an email blast to these various homeschool groups in different parts of the country, letting them know about Alpha Phonics. I did receive one from a New Hampshire homeschool group saying that they're going to link our Blumenfeld archive to their website. So I thought that was worth it. And a lot of times people don't respond, but they'll check it out and, hey, this is good stuff. Let's share it. Let's get the word out. So anyway, my trip up to Maine this month, August 24th, which is a Thursday, I will be speaking at the National Health and Healing, the National Library of Health and Healing, 181 Jefferson Street in Waldoboro. That's just a short distance from Route 1. That will be at noontime. My topic would be Agenda 21 to Agenda 2030, an expose. I'll be talking about Agenda 21 internationally, nationally, and regionally, and locally, and what people can do to fight it. I'll be giving that same presentation at the American Legion in Lincoln, Maine, that same day at 7 p.m. And also the next day, I'll be at Tang's Chinese Cuisine or restaurant on North Street in Holton, Maine, which is right on Route 1. If you're heading up 95, you get to Holton, you take the first 95 exit, and just go south a little bit on the right. And believe me, that's pretty good Chinese food. It's been my experience, the further you get away from a major city, like with a Chinatown, for example, Boston or New York, they have Chinatowns, the food kind of tends to deteriorate in quality. But not here. It's pretty good food, so I was delightfully surprised. So that's going to be a place where you show up and you can order up the menu. And oh, by the way, our Thursday luncheon, there's going to be a light luncheon served here in Waldoboro, too. Anyway, so Friday night, that's going to start at 6. We'll have a bite to eat, and I'll give my presentation, which usually lasts about 45 minutes to an hour. And then the next day, I'll be at the Northeastland Hotel at 9 o'clock. That's in Presque Isle, right on the main drag as you're heading north through town. That's on the right-hand side. And that's another place where you can order off the menu. And it's all free admission, but we do accept donations. So, and I also be doing one in Troy, New Hampshire, Saturday, September 9th at 11 a.m. at the Gay Kimball Library. And it'll be the same topic, because this problem is not just unique to one area. It's happening all over the world, all over the country, and to various degrees. In some cases, it's not that evident and obvious. In some cases, it is. It was interesting. We just returned from the Cheshire Fair, which is in the town of Swansea, Swansea, New Hampshire. There is a Swansea, Massachusetts, spelled differently. And this is a county fair, agricultural fair, and we've had an information table there since 2010. I think last year we weren't able to do it, but every year we've had a table. And it's interesting with our 10-question quiz on the Constitution. It doesn't matter where we are. We get pretty much most people have very little knowledge. But to get on the topic of Agenda 21, Swansea is a beautiful little rural town. And as you're driving on Route 12, you'll go past something called the Swansea Diner. And it was opened in 1988, and it closed down a few years ago. What happened was the owners, they were grandfathered, but they passed some type of environmental regulation at the town level. And because their property is very close to some type of body of water, I don't know if it's a wetland, it might be a wetland, that it was impossible for them to actually sell the place as a restaurant. So there it lays vacant. So that's just an example. And people will drive by there and not even give it a second thought. They see an empty building with a for sale sign, and it's been closed for about 4 years, and no one's bought it yet because you can't make much of a go of it for business, because you can't operate it as a business because you're near a wetland or so many feet from a wetland. And that the policy, no doubt, was something to do with Agenda 21. It was interesting, too, about 4 or 5 years ago, I stopped in the Swansea Town Hall, left them some information about something called New Hampshire, what was it called? It was one of the regional organizations pushing Agenda 21, Granite State Future. Actually, it was a collection of regional entities pushing the same thing. And I went in there, and in the town hall there was a video, a DVD, and it was visioning Swansea. So I got a copy of it, and it's just a total out-and-out Agenda 21. They had their visionary sessions and a couple of different locations, and we're talking about a population of a few thousand, 4,000 or 5,000 offhand. But the people who own Vermont Country Store, they have a foundation, and I can't recall the name of the foundation, but it's that entity that funded this. So you think Vermont Country Store is this nice touristy place, wholesome, old-fashioned, but they're pushing the agenda, just like the owner of Burt's Bees. Burt's Bees, natural products, you want to get mosquito repellent without stinking, have chemicals, boy, you get Burt's Bees, and it's good stuff. But the lady that owns it, she's a globalist, environmentalist, and she bought a bunch of woodlands up in northern Maine, and she donated it to the federal government. How nice of her. And, of course, Obama was very happy to get it, and he turned it into a national monument. A national monument. A friend of mine up there in Maine showed me the 1903 federal law on monuments, and there's nothing in there about woodlands. There's some qualifications that some type of historical event had to happen there, and there's a particular buffer zone. Let's say that George Washington slept there in that particular venue, and you might have so many yards of feet or acres around there that would be sort of an area that would be part of that monument, but it's not that whole lot, not a lot of standing woods. And the ultimate goal is to turn that into a federal park. And you see, if you live up there, your property value's gone down to nothing. The paper mill's closed in Millinocket, 2 paper mills that were, Millinocket was established as a mill town back in 1901, 1902, and it's pretty much a ghost town with both mills closed. There isn't much other industry up there. So, the price of the value of the property goes down. Now, advocates of Big Park come up and say, hey, we'll turn it into a federal park. Then the property will have some value. Oh, there'll be tourists up here. Yeah, there'll be tourists up there, but it'll be limited activity, limited abilities, limited availability for the land. But that little, your store that went out of business or going out of business all of a sudden will be revived. But you're playing into the hands of Big Brother if you do that. That's the last thing you want to do is take your property and have it part of a federal park system. That means you've lost your property rights. And that's the game plan. And according to my friend Roger Eck up there and a few others, that there was a map of that area, the Crown of Maine, and the map is I don't know if it's 20 or 30 years old, but it has a projection, a population projection, what it will be, 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, and so forth into the future. And they're well ahead of their depopulation for that area of Maine. And that's part and parcel of the Agenda 21, depopulation of the rural areas, clustering them in the big cities and the various sustainable development areas, smart growth areas, and so forth. And that's something, again, it affects people in the city and affects people in the rural areas. So that's why it's very important to not just to come to my presentations if you're available, but also to learn about this. And if you're listening to this anywhere in the United States and even other parts of the world, as long as there's an English-speaking audience, my German is very, very rusty, and I just have a little bit of high school French. I'd be, if not me, we have Tom DeWeese also, who's an incredible presenter on the subject. Please get a hold of us, and we're there. We want to help you. We want to help the people understand. And it's amazing that from 2011 to 2013 or 14, there was a lot of interest, Tea Party groups, there was a lot of excitement. And then all of a sudden it kind of petered down, and that seems to what happened. Things ebb and flow, whether it be the global warming issue or it be the immigration issue and other issues. They tend to ebb and flow. But the bad guys are there in season and out of season, and we have to be there as well. And we had a lot of great success stories on the Agenda 21. So please, again, those be giving 4 engagements from August 24th to the 26th. And please, if you're listening to this in the area, if you know people that live in the area, and if not, and would like me to speak on the subject, or Tom DeWeese or anyone else, please get a hold of us, and we'll be happy to speak to your area, speak to your group, and what have you. It was interesting at the Cheshire Fair. Again, we keep on demonstrating how little people know about the Constitution, and it's not for us to show up there and say, boy, people are stupid. I tell folks, look, don't feel bad about taking this 10-question quiz. I said if it was a quiz on, science, I'm not doing too well. But the difference is, the Constitution is something that all Americans should understand and learn and know. And you don't have to be a walking encyclopedia. You don't have to be a legal scholar or a Harvard graduate from Harvard Law School to understand the Constitution. And just a rudimentary understanding of the Constitution will show you that most of the folks in Congress are violating their oath of office. And the president, and although I like a lot of what I see with Donald Trump, he's not exactly a strict constructionist. He's a lot better than Hillary, no question about it. There's some really good things that are happening. Pulling us out of the Paris climate change accords agreement or so forth was great. Getting us out of TPP, repealing some of the ridiculous regulations on the coal industry, and many other things. Good stuff. But a true constitutionalist would be getting us out of NATO. To his credit, he said to the NATO people, you're going to pay more than you're paying, and they've been paying a little bit more, I suppose. But the bottom line is we should be getting out of NATO. We should be getting all of our soldiers all over the world back home, and getting us out of the Middle East. And the same thing about the Middle East. He did speak to a large group of. He went to Saudi Arabia, and he tell them you got to get control of your militants, get them out, put them out of business. And to be truthful, ISIS is killing a lot of Muslims too. In fact, I think they're killing more Muslims than they're killing Christians. But but unfortunately, Donald Trump is not a constitutionalist, but I think he's listening. He's receptive. He does have some advisors. His attorney, Jay Sekulow, I think, is pretty much a constitutionalist. He's a Christian, and he's done a lot of good things over the years. So we're pleased to see that. Also, it was interesting, too, that I was looking at the Cheshire Fair's Facebook page, and this fair goes back, I think it's over 100 years old. And I've been going to the fair. I've had either a table there since about 1993, not every year, but maybe the first 7 or 8 years from 93 to 2000, and then back in 2010 up until recently, we've had a table there. I've been either a table for Camp Constitution or this other organization I was involved with way back then. And I've always seen Confederate flags, some of the vendors. It's sort of what you call a redneck territory. Good old boys, farmers, the people that actually grow the food and produce the milk and the cheese and the things like that people need, people in the cities need to eat. It's redneck country. And so you'll see some of these vendors that sell redneck type stuff. And there's actually were 2 vendors at this latest fair. And one of them is a lady of color. She happens to be, I don't know if she's Japanese or Chinese, I can't be certain. She's a U.S. citizen, and she lives in Springfield, and this is pretty much how she makes a living. She goes to county fairs and other venues, and she sells clothing, and she has, clothing and accessories, blankets and things like that nature, some jewelry. And she had some Confederate, at least some items with the Confederate flag. And let me qualify that. It's not the Confederate flag, actually. It's the battle flag of the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia, the Army of Northern Virginia, the St. Andrew's Cross. The Confederate flag, there was several versions, but it had not even a close resemblance of what they're concerned about, what the liberals are concerned about, this St. Andrew's flag that you see with the cross and the stars and bars. And so the other vendor was someone that he had a lot of kind of redneck type things there. He had a few interesting shirts, and I could see where some people may be offended. I was offended by a few of the things he had that were vulgar. I won't go into it. Something that a Christian gentleman or a Christian lady would not sell. But he had this stuff on there. And when I took a close look at some of these pro-American type things, his T-shirts, they were not made in the USA. So I didn't, this guy's just making money. He's probably not, he might be conservative. But I can say one thing, that there is no Klan rally going on at the Cheshire Fair. And some liberals, posted on Facebook, people will be, I was offended, and what's going on with my beloved New Hampshire and so forth. Like, this is a recent phenomenon. The Confederate flag flying at the Cheshire Fair, and how horrible it is. There are people from different walks of life that come to the fair. That vendor, he could have got a few people a little, hey, they don't like him, to just walk off to the next booth. I mean, we had Camp Constitution had a booth. If you're a liberal, you're probably not going to stop there. You know, the Jehovah's Witnesses had a table, and you're probably not interested. And then there was a church that, a Bible-believing church. There was the Gideons. You know, you had a couple of veterans groups there. You had some vendors selling Whirlpool, what do you call the heated little saunas and different things like that. And, then you had all the various vendors selling food and so forth, which you find at a typical fair. And, again, people from different backgrounds enjoy the place. And, yeah, I can understand that some people may find that particular Confederate battle flag in Northern Virginia offensive. It isn't meant to offend. I don't think the people at the two vendors had any intent. Were making racist statements. And, but it's also called liberty. But even if they do, it's called liberty. I mean, I'm offended by this thing called the homosexual rainbow flag. What does the rainbow have to do with sodomy? I don't know. But in the late 70s, some homosexual activist in San Francisco decided to make it a symbol of of sodomy. And again, I don't understand how they did that. They stole something that came out of the Bible. I think rainbows are beautiful. I got to see a few the last couple of days in the wake of some thunder showers. And then you see transgender flags. I mean, these things are just like the last 6 months. I mean, there isn't any history of transgenders with the flag that goes back hundreds of years. Something that was made a few months ago. And in Boston, there was a large bus, and on the side of the bus was boys are boys and girls are girls, or something really controversial like that, pointing out that this transgender stuff is nonsense. And Mayor of Boston, he had to hold a press conference, and they had to raise the transgender flag over City Hall Plaza because millions of transgendered people are offended by this. Well, no, maybe just a couple of people. And the militant leftists attacked the bus and threw rocks and they did damage, and just because they're trying to point out the true science, the true reality. It's just amazing. But what we like to do here at Camp Constitution is we are in the process of getting a permit to raise the Christian flag over City Hall Plaza in Boston. And the Christian flag is interesting. I didn't know a whole lot of the history of the flag. It only goes back to the late 1800s. There was a gentleman from New York City. I can't remember his name, but the man that was supposed to speak at this Christian gathering didn't show up, and he just got up there and gave a little, off-the-cuff presentation, a talk or sermon, and he suggested, gee, what would the attributes of a Christian flag, what would it look like? And a few years later, he and another man collaborated, and they created this flag. And it's you see a white field, and there's blue on the upper left corner, and a red cross. And it was adopted slowly by various churches, some liberal churches, and they even have a pledge. There's a pledge that's used by liberal churches, at least at that time, and more conservative churches. And the Lutherans. The Lutheran Church, especially during World War II, flew it alongside the American flag, and I did it because they wanted to demonstrate their loyalty not just to the United States, but to the Christian values. There were a lot of Germans in the Lutheran Church, of course, people of ethnic Germans, and they wanted to make sure that they were not in favor of the Nazi regime. So we put in for a permit, and when I say a permit, it's on city property. And there's a huge flagpole, and you have to. So I can imagine that if anyone just showed up and decided to do it, you have to get the little key that will actually open up the flagpole and then be able to raise the flag. About 5 years ago, we raised the Gadsden flag, and we had it there for a week, and we had some people show up and gave some short little speeches. It was a great time. We had my good friend Garrett Lear. Pastor Garrett Lear showed up with his colonial outfit and his replica musket, his firing replica musket. He didn't fire it, but he was walking around with it. And we were there talking about Agenda 21. And that beautiful flag flooded there for a whole week. And we think very much that we're going to be able to get this flag and get some clergy members. And we're really, really telling folks, that Boston is a city set on a hill, regardless of the folks in power, the hostility they have to the city's history and to the Christian history of our country. We are not going to be silent. We're coming out of the closet. If they can fly the flag of Communist China and then pass resolutions honoring the Communist Revolution that killed millions and millions of people, and I say honor, the city of Boston will pass a resolution. They even have city councilors that were there. They've been doing this for the last 7 or 8 years, maybe even more. They fly the so-called homosexual flag to commemorate a riot that happened in a homosexual barroom that was owned by the mafia when they beat up policemen. Some homosexuals assaulted policemen. That is their Independence Day, folks. That's what they celebrate all over the country. And I think this would be a good stick that if we can do it in Boston, I would like to see Christian people in other parts of the country do something similar. So just stay tuned, and if we'll get the permit, we'll actually post it on our not only on our Facebook page, but also on our YouTube channel. So, I just want to mention one thing here before I get a few minutes left. I was watching a debate between Ann Coulter and Anna Caspian. I think I get her name right. She's the Young Turk, Anna Caspanian. She's the sidekick to Cenk Uygur, and she's an atheist, left-wing, so-called progressive. I call them retrogressives. And Coulter. The debate was on Trump, pro or con. What did you think of Trump's first 6 months or whatever it was? And of course, the Young Turk leftist. She just detests Trump, everything about Trump. She didn't drop any F-bombs. That was kind of unusual for her. She can be very nasty. She loves to drop F-bombs, but she's an angry atheist, and you can expect that's what you expect. She's also, I guess, worth a few $1 million too. So for a progressive who's supposed to give all the money to the poor, she's doing pretty well for herself. And then Ann Coulter. Now I like Ann on many things. She writes a book every 6 months, it seems. But I didn't watch the whole debate, but I watched about 20 minutes, a half an hour. And one thing that was not mentioned in the 30 minutes or so that I listened was the U.S. Constitution. I didn't hear any reference to the Constitution. There was references to the TPP, references to the Paris Accords, the immigration issue, building the wall, and so forth, but no reference to the Constitution. And I think that's important. And again, I think in any debate, when you're debating these far leftist communist types who really despise the Constitution, and keep in mind that Cenk Uygur is her boss or cohort is the founder of the Young Turk of Wolfpack, which is an organization that is promoting an Article 5 convention. You've got to be a little concerned that, of course, they have no love of the Constitution. They want to see it rewritten. And I get another minute left. I also Ryan Clayton, who had been the former executive director of Wolfpack, he got in a little trouble. He's now got his own organization, and he got assaulted. I don't know all the details. He crashed a party of the Veritas group, I think it's Jim Forsythe, and I don't know if the assault was genuine or if it was staged. I have to look into that. But he was also at CPAC, the conservative gathering down in D.C. that takes place in early March, I believe, passing out Russian flags, and none of these people knew who he was. I don't think it's amazing. I locked horns with him a couple of years ago in Massachusetts. He threatened to sue me if I kept mentioning that George Soros was, I made a reference to Soros in Wolfpack. Anyway, we're running out of time. I want to thank you for listening. You've been listening to Camp Constitution Radio with your host, Hal Shurtleff. And until next week, God bless.